Hello there, Broderick Wallace here, and I hope that you are doing well, whoever you may be. And I think in the last video I said that I would talk about the negative things later. It's left me, to be honest. I don't feel there's any need to explore that. There's positive and negative in everything. It's a constant, balancing process. And I don't like to wallow. I like to, it's good to see yourself as someone who's capable and dealing with things and strong when one needs to be strong. And I don't know, benevolent maybe when it's required. So I had a period of a particular kind of stress that we're all familiar with, that rears its head from time to time, and I had to make a lot of changes, and I'm pleased to say that that I did, and everything is fine and everything continues. And although I never would have said it at the time, I'm so glad that I've had this ongoing experience of the potentiality during particularly intense parts of this training and this nomadic lifestyle, whereby I wasn't sure if I was going to survive. So if you can keep your practice up when you're not sure if you're even going to survive, and under particular psychological strain, it gives you a certain sense of pride, I guess. And trouble is, you talk like that, and you sort of feel, oh, maybe I'm bigging myself up too much. First of all, it's like, oh, maybe I'm moaning. It's like, oh, maybe I'm being arrogant. Well, this is the thing when you press record. This is why a lot of people opt to say nothing, and I totally understand that. Don't get me wrong. And just to highlight silence in this particular respect. Say, for instance, we read Bardon's initiation into Hermetics, and we consider the strong emphasis on silence within the practice in terms of progress. Every time you reveal something, it's said that you give something up, or you open yourself up, and it's unmistakable. You obviously, Bardon opened up, right, in order to share these teachings. And since Bardon, say for instance my teacher, although he's done an extremely good job of keeping the dignity and so very much private, it's still out there. And it's funny how, you see, this word, the occult, it's funny how these arts protect themselves. It's usually through just sheer disbelief. And there's another factor as well, which is the time and dedication involved. And you will find that if you meet anyone that's made headway, they're very careful with their words. And I noticed over the years that silence, first of all, it can be used as a weapon, and it can also be used as a competitive tool in a way as well. And I'll explain these. Obviously, if you open up and you're chatting to someone and they're very quick to close things down, or to not answer, or to walk away, this is a way of sometimes, not in every case, of this person taking control. And sometimes someone may choose to be silent as a way of creating an air of mystery, when really it's because they haven't got anything to say, or they're afraid to speak up. And you see, because human beings, they tend to, congregate, and a notion of what's normal is formulated, and people don't like to step outside of that. Obviously, I'm talking to people on this channel, a lot of people that go out their way to step outside of that. But you know what I'm saying? The majority. It can be a very stressful thing, and we've all felt that, I was meditating on a motorway bridge a couple of nights ago. I decided to go back there in the morning, and I didn't think I was that visible, really, and I just assumed people would think, oh, he's just sitting down for a bit, no big deal. It was amazing the amount of vehicles that tooted the horn, and it was almost like a kind of like a sort of show of support or something. Obviously I was busy concentrating, or actually yes, I was concentrating in that session, and I heard someone say, "Are you okay?" I opened my eyes. This beautiful blonde young woman was standing in front of me. It took me a moment to register. I'm sure she must have seen my eyes move up and down. I said, "Yes, I'm fine, thank you." Obviously, just my mind is still kind of partly directed where it had been, but snapping out into that interaction, it takes a few seconds. And she said, "Are you sure you're okay?" And then I realised that there was a tear trail which had been shed from my right eye. And funnily enough, I do have a problem with the tear duct or ducts, I'm not sure of all the medical details, in that eye. And it doesn't water itself, but I have very poor vision from the right eye. It doesn't produce enough lubrication. I have to put drops in. It has no trouble at all in a state of emotional extremity, in just letting rip. Just funny, it's just one eye, only one eye decided to. I was having a kind of what you might call beatific experience, and what anyone thought was literally the last thing on my consciousness, within my consciousness. And because she asked me, I think it might have even been 3 times if everything was okay. She said she even parked especially to come and ask me. I said, "Oh, you think I'm going to top myself, right?" I said, "No, I just, I didn't go into full details, but it's an elevated position, and there's a kind of distraction, if you like, from the traffic, but when you're that high up, it becomes a kind of ambience." And I just sat there, or rather stood there before, and looked out and thought, God, this civilization. Look at all these busy people and the noise and the aggressiveness of this system, the combustion engine. And I saw 2 or 3 people, like, when you're trying to drive sensibly and you've got someone right up your arse, and it's like they're not even, of course they're not thinking, just that monkey brain, all they care about is where they need to get to. And I saw twice in a row, within seconds, extremely dangerous driving. I just sort of, oh my God, I just had to, took me a moment to, oh God. And I thought, well, I'm probably going to be breathing in fumes, but you can't really get away from that, can you? So I settled down and did what I had to do. And like I said, going back to this young woman, when she realised that there really wasn't a problem, and I said, "Look, I do meditate around here. I meditate twice a day, and you might often, if you live in the area, you might see me. the Buddha of Bluebell Hill. You might see me in meditation sometimes on the edge of a field or on a bench, and I've just chosen here today. And she gave me this look like I was insane, basically, this sort of judgment. And I realized that it was because she realized in a way she was wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. And I must admit, I did say, I said I couldn't give a shit what anyone thinks, but please don't take offense. There's nothing, nothing against you. And I regretted swearing afterwards. I thought, oh, maybe that was a bit vile. But I think it was because she looked like the kind of girl that had heard a bit of swearing. She looked she looked tough. I thought that'll be okay. And it was because she was wrong, or she felt like that she was wrong, that she then moved to judgment mode with the eyes rolling and oh, you're obviously crazy. And she walked off immediately. And I didn't have time to say thanks. Like, that's really cool, actually. Like, you cared about someone enough to park up, walk up, the steps, and talk to a stranger. So, however negatively I've framed that, just that kind of, oh, there's no reason for me to be up here. Well, instead of saying, oh, okay, fine, and then me, I would have said, you know what, thanks, it's a really nice thing to do. It's just like, oh, eyes rolling, you're insane, just immediately took off. I felt like she was she needed to assert dominance in that moment, like she was correct about something, or there was something wrong with me. You see this a lot, and this brings me back to the silence thing. Again, it's amazing when you think, most people, and we've all done it, I've done it, we struggle with this. It's something that's really important to get a grip on, is to hold your dignity and not react emotionally. Now, that's a skill to be learned. That takes maturity, that takes strength, especially when you're under stress, especially when the world has tried to destroy you, when you have to struggle with that resentment. But you see, that silence, it can also be used as a superiority tool in a way. Like, person's just spoken, I've got better things to do, or I'm not going to engage. So you got to watch out for this one, And the further that you progress, the more difficult it will become. And I know I have to be forgiving. Like, if you're fortunate enough to meet people who have made, put it this way, that are further along the path than you are, there's things they can't talk about. And sometimes all that time sat in silence in this training, they can appear inhuman, they can appear rude, but it's only because of the training. And it's important to remind yourself to not take offense in those moments, and to recognize the hierarchy involved. And in the same way that one day you will be in their position, and sometimes do find yourself in that position, guess what I'm saying is it's really important to hold your ground. You're going to come across a lot of lunacy online, a lot of weird stuff, and a lot of sweet people, and more the value of silence, of, you know, not getting involved. But it's also unavoidable that there is a balance to be struck also. If you choose to become visible, to have your say, to try to communicate or encourage, you might say that there's something you've given away, or you've opened yourself up in a particular way. But there might also be something else that you haven't considered, and that is, if you're telling the truth, people who are intuitive enough, people who get a strong sense of feeling, will recognize that truth. And instead of losing something, you'll gain something. You'll gain the belief of, what would you call it? I'm trying to think of, what was it? Disassociated whirlpools of, let's just say disassociated whirlpools of independent, semi-independent mind stuff. I think it evens out if you're just being honest and you respect the rules in the extreme. I don't think it's a problem, but obviously this is something, because I've been more open about my channel recently, this is a real key point here, and I've sought advice on, you know, how exactly do I handle this? And one of the ideas I've had, obviously, is to move off into side areas and make videos on particular subjects, like obviously the recent ayahuasca series, which is still underway. I don't know how many videos it will take to tell that story. And the next video I will definitely start reading Weird Weaver Chapter 0 by myself. Which is going to require a certain kind of artistic appreciation, or it's going to require a kind of symbolic, an appreciation for symbolic expression. The understanding that one can't always be direct. So, in place of silence, we can use art. We can make a performance which is at once true and at the same time pointing to, or rather facilitating, a kind of right brain examination of the content. So, silence, it can be used in different ways, and it depends on where you're standing. It's a relative thing as well. And you should be guarded against I guess it would be easier to say stay honest and sensible, and everything will work out. in the end. As the path continues, there are many changes that we go through. I did say in the last video that that kind of image of people that are ahead, kind of nodding in understanding because they've been waiting for you to realize things. It's like you have to become engaged. I wouldn't necessarily say that no one's going to hold your hand from time to time, but this only happens if you prove yourself worthy. This unavoidable set of sacrifices, if implemented long enough, is rewarded. I was speaking to a customer a few days ago actually about how certain life experiences take a long time to... Actually, no, it wasn't a customer. It was another beautiful girl actually in the laundrette. Yeah. Oh God, they're everywhere. I was talking about, how certain life experiences unlock themselves even years and years later. So, for instance, when I used to be a security guard, I remember doing the night shift. I'd be looking up at the stars. I'd come down, my locker was full of books on ancient Egypt, and especially Robert Bevell and that whole gang, that whole thing going on in the 90s that was really strong and new in the 90s. And my mind was really absorbed with this whole subject. I think, I even had like art that I'd done, sort of sellotaped to the inside of the locker door when I opened it. So it was funny, it was like a kind of hermetic chamber, if you like, in the locker room of the security control room. And my boss used to call me Pharaoh. It's funny, like I was that obsessed. And I used to get I did get some appreciation, of course I did, but I used to get a lot of, or rather I could detect the talking behind my back. I remember I caught wind of someone describing me as a dreamer. And I did go off to Egypt. This was the year 2000. I went off to Egypt to come back. I had the pictures and, learned a lot. I think I've talked about this before a lot, so I won't go into major detail there. But when I came back, even though I'd had a wonderful experience and I'd seen the pyramids and lots of things that I read about, and I actually had what I believe was a kind of spiritual experience inside the King's Chamber, which was an energetic thing. It was a download of physical energy and an uplift of mood that lasted to memory. Let me think. I think it lasted the rest of the day. You see, I was smoking at the time, smoking Marlboros, which is a bad idea because I'm asthmatic. And my lungs felt really damaged, overloaded and saturated with smoke, and my energies had gone down. And even though I was excited to be in Egypt, because I was on my own, I was smoking, because I was like, I met this guy in my, I think early to mid 20s, and I was smoking as a form of kind of like, because it's a little bit nerve-wracking, because you're in this foreign country and, well, you're on your own, right? And it was only 2 years previous that some tourists were gunned down, sadly, in Egypt. So tourism had dropped, so you got a lot of attention. There was a lot of eyes upon you, and people, hotel porters and such like would be saying, I can arrange a camel and a tour and all this. Like, everyone was trying to get money out of you, or etc., etc. So did have a few nerve-wracking moments, And I actually got bullied by an Egyptian soldier in the Egyptian museum as well, who pushed me into a corner and sort of demanded some backsheesh like this, and obviously I kind of felt like I needed. I think now I would, saying that, I don't think someone would necessarily try it on now. I think it was because I was young. I wouldn't put up with that, but I did at the time. So cigarettes were a form of kind of, yeah, I'm doing something. You know, it was nerves, right? So spending, basically, again, backsheesh gets you everything in Egypt, right? I paid off I mean, let's say tour guide. I mean, everything. I'm sure it's still like it now. I hope not. But it's ridiculous. Like, it's really badly run. I mean, we're talking about the Great Pyramids of Giza here, right? You'd think there'd be more care, more money poured into it, more. It was really bad. And there were even like very dangerous like tunneled holes into the desert that were nearby. I went to find them actually because I'd been reading Robert Bovell's Secret Chamber, so I went to find these kind of entrances to the underworld because of this notion that there's just as much underneath the pyramids. When we take, basically, if we consider that they're symbolic of the stars, you know, as above, so below. So we have the stars, and then we have heaven brought down to earth in the form of the pyramids. Then we should find the underworld expressed also. So I was interested to sort of get close to some of these chambers and oh, hello, got car moth, it's gone. And let's just say the safety wasn't up to scratch. But anyway, just paying the backsheesh to spend probably about 20 minutes or so lying in the sarcophagus within the king's chamber, and I positioned my arms in the, you know, like the pharaoh, if you like. So I literally became pharaoh that day, although, you know, not, I don't really mean that, because no pharaoh was, they're not tombs, right? But nonetheless, I think it's very likely that they would have been used as some kind of ritualistic after-death process, not only with living monks who are, you know, priests rather, who are undergoing their training, but many uses obviously with the pharaoh as well in life after death. And I think they're just multifunctional, I think. And but it's just such a big subject, too many questions, too much. But I do have an idea of what happened to me, some idea anyway, and I was infused with a sense of vitality, the energy, the enthusiasm, the you might say vital force within my body was accentuated, and it was a heady feeling, like I wanted to laugh, like I was saturated, and so it made a big impression on me. And I would say that the money that it cost me, and it cost me a lot, and it was worth it. But when I got back, I had the pictures. I put a picture up on the wall in I used to live in a council flat at the time, and sorry about the traffic noise. This is what I have to deal with. It's I'm actually scarred by it now. Like I mean, you know, I love my Hermione, don't get me wrong. We get around and, you know, she's a good girl, but generally speaking, I just don't like motoring. or anything that's got anything to do with it. So obviously, I met John Anthony West and Robert Bevell by chance, or perhaps divine providence, in the Le Méridien Pyramids Hotel. I had a view of the pyramids, and I had this energetic experience within the pyramids. So I went home, even though I didn't do a lot of exploring. I did go to Saqqara, but I didn't have the money, and I also felt a little bit, again, because I was young, I did spend a lot of time just keep going back to the pyramids as I was in, or on the edge of, I think I was in Giza. So that's where I would go most days. So I come home, and, well, what happens then? Obviously not a lot. I mean, I don't have, I mean, what do you do with that experience? It's something that you were drawn to. You go out there, you come home, it's kind of climax in a way, right? You don't know how do you file that? How do you develop that? So there's a notion in the mind of, I could have saved that money, I could have perhaps, been more concerned with my career. I could have used that for driving lessons, because I still couldn't drive at that point, and I decided to go to Egypt, see the pyramids. That was what was important to me. Am I a responsible human being? So making music and art and all kinds of stuff, and always chasing what was important to me, whilst still working hard, don't get me wrong, and paying the bills and being responsible, but that extra time, that extra effort. And this does relate to the, losing the game to eventually win the game concept that I've explored before. So this impression that you build up that is not understood by most people, one day it was understood. And, like you're talking literally, let me think. Exactly 20 years later, the benefit of that experience unlocked itself. Obviously, I'm talking about, joining the group that I belong to. All of that experience, all of that effort, and all of those things that don't fit, that are not appreciated, that if you don't have the, the support in terms of friends or whatever, if this is kind of all pretty much going on in your head, it can make you feel isolated. It can make you feel like you are, I wouldn't go so far as to say the dreamer, although I would say, if you're going to call me a dreamer behind my back, it's like, well, how do you think, how do you think anyone has any success in life? It begins as a dream, right? So, what was that person saying about themselves if they use that as a derogatory label? So yes, many of the things that we go through, many of the things that we're drawn to, it may take a long time before we understand why we were drawn into these unusual obsessions, these unusual places. And fate is a funny thing. So, silence and the unlocking of one's efforts many, many years in the future I'm thinking that the right way to close this particular ramble is to say, and because I know I'm never, I mean, you know, it's like I'm lucky from the point of view that anyone that watches these videos, they may already know me, or they're a little bit curious, or they're a little bit alternative, way out, whatever. You know, searchers, people that are on the path, so they're already, their minds are already open. And I believe that it can only be a good thing, it can only be a beneficial thing. And everything that I say will have its particular moment. The video will be numbered, and it will go into a particular place in time. And only those that are interested will. It's a bit like if you want some certain information from a book. Sometimes a lot of it is boring, but you're searching for that, you know, for the gold there. So you'll keep turning the pages, even though, you know, you're not interested in everything. But like, there's just certain, and a lot of those books were like that actually in the 90s concerning archaeoastronomy in Egypt. I guess I was looking for the reality behind what was described as the Hermetic Path or the magical arts, in the same way that when I'm reading books in terms of just one particular example, the Claudian invasion of Britain. I can't remember the author right now, something like that. You're reading about all these military tactics and God knows what else, but he's also painting a picture and going a little bit deeper than most sources in terms of names and places and strange events. And my mind is going through some of things that are not really relevant to me, that I'm not necessarily interested in, but every now and then, it's a wonderful thing about reading, and again, how important reading is. Every now and then you will just find this connection with the past, particularly in terms of what it is that you're looking for. And what I was looking for was a sense or a smell of the Druids, if you like. Just a feeling where, just a kind of subliminal connection, just a moment where you kind of got it, or you felt the reality of it, right? So it takes a long time. Everything takes its own time. And the reason why we put in so much time, the reason why we're so patient, I will save you a lot of time if you are the intuitive type that I spoke of earlier that can sense truth. When I tell you that Franz Bardon was the real deal, and I know this, and I'll tell you why I know this. Because I know people that have proven this to me. And in time, obviously I can't say, it goes further. There's a lot of crap on the internet. There's a lot of books that contain a little bit of truth, a little bit of that, some of the Bardon story, it's a little bit hard to swallow. I mean, I don't know what to make of some of the things that I've heard about for Bardon, etc. But in terms of the training, it's a really powerful moment when you first realize how real this is. Now, if you were going to dedicate your life towards a particular path, you'd need some extraordinary evidence, wouldn't you? You'd need some extraordinary evidence. And if you're that interested, if you're that driven, if you make the right efforts towards the hierarchy of the situation, then I promise you that that proof is waiting. That's as close as I can push it. But anyway, it's a wonderful night. It's summer, it's hot, but the nights are cold. So after a day cleaning windows in the heat, it's wonderful in the cool of the night to simply close one's eyes and examine and coerce the inner realms, just that one step